All right, welcome to the Exposing Scum Landlords channel once again. We are going to be doing a react to some of the news from yesterday. The Toronto police raided and the encampment at Trinity Bellwood, and it did not go smoothly as it should have not gone smoothly. So just a quick history. Most cities are probably experiencing the same thing. Right now in Ontario, we are having an eviction crisis and a homelessness crisis. The eviction ban has been lifted since early January this year. This is the second, March, no, so, okay, we're going to start over. Welcome once again back to the evicting, shut up. 3, 2. All right, welcome back to the Exposing Scum Landlords Project channel. I'm Aaron Crane. This is Andrea, my co-organizer. We're just going to get right
It's
into
Andrea. Get it right, Andrea. Andrea. Not Andrea. Andrea. Come on, muchacha. You want to redo this again? Because you end up effing up a lot. And I don't know how you heard me when I said ass your head out of your ass and you said shut up without me hearing me when I was muted.
Okay, let's take this again. Like I said, I should just call you Drea. All right, welcome back to the Exposing Scum Landlords channel. This is Aaron and Andrea, co-founders of the project. Let's just get right into this today. Yesterday, Toronto police and Mayor John Tory decided that to kick people out of the homelessness encampments here in Toronto.
Or just call him Trojan. Trojan.
Okay.
Trojan? Trojan.
Well, it,
Kind of rings.
okay, Cubby, this is not a joke.
Yes, I know, but I'm making fun of our whoever he is.
Okay, so, yeah. So what's been happening lately? Obviously, this has been happening in a lot of cities across North America, probably a lot around the world as well. COVID hit. People lost their jobs, lost their income, and found themselves in a perilous situation of having to choose between paying rent in full, and surviving with meeting their basic needs, such as food, hydro, water, personal protective equipment. And a lot of people chose their medications, their personal protection equipment, their utilities, and to eat. And many tried to pay what they could in rent. Many rent seekers decided that that wasn't good enough. An eviction moratorium was introduced in early May or June, and then people who couldn't pay their rent couldn't be evicted. Filings could not be filed with the landlord-tenant board, and for several months, this is how it went until I believe it was September that the eviction moratorium was lifted. Eviction notices started going out, and then eviction hearing applications started going to the resident or the landlord-tenant board. And beginning in or October and November. Hearings started between November and December. There were I get conflicting reports, but from anywhere from about 14,000 eviction notices to 40,000 eviction hearings. Sorry, for 14,000 eviction hearings and 40,000 eviction hearings. We will go into another about the problem with the eviction hearings, but many people lost their homes, and obviously with no income they couldn't find another home, so they ended up living on the streets. And what ended up happening is most of them started living in parks in tents, and tent encampments popped up, tent cities if you want to call them. And there was a promise by the police not to remove people from the parks who had to no other choice but to live there, due to the fact that the Toronto homeless shelter system is not a safe space for people. In fact, over the past year, violence within the system has doubled and tripled. There's no space available. They've set up emergency shelters, but there's no real way for people to isolate in them. They're simply 6-foot barriers between the beds. They are plastic see-through, so you have no privacy at all. They're mixed gender, so there was sexual violence, which made people opt to stay on the street, because staying on the street or living in the park in a tent is a lot safer in terms of physical safety and health safety. There have been multiple outbreaks in the shelter system, so yeah. Many people decided to live in the parks. These reports are regarding Trinity Bellwood Park in Toronto, but there are many parks that have encampments. So we're going to see more of this over the next little bit. So let's start with this first one here, which is from CBC Canada, or the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, which is Canada's public or government-owned, or, well, not really government-owned, but national broadcast service.
It was eviction day at Trinity Bellwoods Park in Toronto, where dozens of people have been living throughout the pandemic.
Hello, anyone home?
Choosing to live outside because it feels safer.
I cannot go in.
Okay, I literally just described that a lot of people don't feel safe for various reasons, accessibility reasons, nationality, religious reasons, discriminate based on that. Queer and trans folks are not safe in shelters. They get assaulted all the time. So that's another factor.
Into a shelter space for health and safety reasons.
But we have hotel spaces as well.
I cannot go into a hotel space for health and safety reasons.
Okay.
I'm safer here in the park. This is where one goes when they're homeless, especially during a pandemic.
The city handed out trespassing notices a week ago.
We need to persuade those people, and we've tried everything. We have made the 20,000 visits to talk to each and every one of those people to persuade them to come indoors.
Mayor John Tory.
Okay, shameless dunking right now. What is with this man's hair? He looks like he's from one of those old photos of the white-haired man in the white-haired wig right now. But yeah, this is Toronto's mayor, John Tory, he is a Tory or conservative, or if you want progressive conservative, there is no such thing as a progressive conservative. Progressive and conservative are diametrically opposed. Yeah. And he is one of the people that at one point promised to keep encampments from being targeted. And now, of course, he's flip-flopped on it. Because apparently we're now almost out of COVID. But people still Okay, sorry about that. My batteries in my mic just died. Let's continue on with this because I just completely forgot what I was saying.
Tory says it's come down to this.
It just isn't healthy to be living in a public park, besides the fact that it is illegal.
They hoped it would be peaceful, but at noon,
It's a lot healthier living outside than in cramped quarters when there's a virus around. And it's a lot safer in the park when there's violence in the shelter system. I'm sorry, Tory, but you're wrong. Is it illegal to camp in the parks? Yes. And if it were just a couple of people setting up a tent to just camp in the park and have a party, that'd be an entirely different situation. But, Mr. Tory, these people are living in the park. They have no other choice but to live in the park. Even if they're on supports like ODSP, OW, CPPD, or any other type of support, it is not enough to get housing in the city of Toronto or the province of Ontario. I've stated this in previous videos. ODSP pays $1,168 a month. Ontario Works pays $649 a month. Average rent in Toronto is $1,600. Market rent is high. ODSP benefits minus market rent equals homelessness. This is why there are people living on the streets. Because there is not enough truly affordable housing in this province. And when I say truly affordable housing, I don't mean Toronto housing. I mean truly geared to income housing. Most quote-unquote affordable housing is still out of reach of those on support.
this. Some were pepper sprayed. 3 were arrested. By 3 o'clock, there was 1 encampment left.
What's the plan now? How long are you going to stay?
I mean, we're going to try and stay as long as we can. We do have 2 residents here who are saying this is where they want to remain.
But if you can stay, sit down.
Then a call for calm.
Do not escalate the situation, right? Because you escalate it, you're putting them at harm. So this is not a protest. And let's respect the process and we'll get out of here safe. And they can get housed, okay?
Evictions now!
After a couple of tense hours, a tentative resolution, police agreed to back off. Protesters, for the most part, agreed to leave.
I wouldn't say I'm happy because the fact that the situation exists is insane. It's illogical, it's immoral. It doesn't make sense to me personally, but it's ongoing. You know, I'm glad that people weren't, like, that I know of, the residents in the encampment weren't physically harmed today, so that's a win.
They may not have been physically harmed, but they were definitely emotionally harmed, and they will be probably physically harmed in the near future. They now have two choices: live on the physical street, on the sidewalk, or go into the shelter system. Many of them already said they don't feel safe there. That's a big problem. Many of them aren't going to go into the shelter system. Many of them are just going to go somewhere else. Or end up dead. I can guarantee you that there are going to be suicide attempts, because now these people feel even more helpless. There needs to be an action. Around evictions. There needs to be an action against rent seeking. There has to be an action against the continued poverty of people who have disabilities, who are on supports, people who live on Ontario Works because they can't get approved for disability. And they do have disabilities. It's something needs to be done. We need to get Doug Ford out of office. We need to get John Tory out of office. We need to get Patrick Brown in Toronto or in Brampton out of office. We need to stop this vicious cycle of choice between a turd soup and a shit sandwich that we are going through, with it being the PCs voted in, then the Liberals voted in, then the PCs voted in, then the Liberals voted in. We need to give another party a shot. Personally, I support the New Democrats, the NDP, and I would love to see them get in office. But no, people are still pissed off about the job-saving thing that was called Ray Days. That saved jobs. Bob Ray was not an NDP. He ran under NDP. He is more suited towards the Liberal Party. He's even started running in the Liberal Party. Let's give some true progressives a chance. Stop voting in these parties that aren't doing anything for you as working class, lower class people who have no income, low income. Stop voting for them because you have moral alignments with them. You're voting against your best interest. Stop thinking that.
Okay, so Ali, where do things go from here?
So, Andrew, the remaining 2 or 3 people in the tents here have accepted some form of accommodation. The city has been out offering people accommodation in a shelter, but as we've heard before, that doesn't work for a lot of people. They say for safety reasons they choose to live in a park. And here at Trinity Bellwoods, at any given time, there's usually about 30 people living here in tents. I know at least 8 people have accepted the city's offer and will be moving into a shelter tonight. But the majority of folks that I've spoken with just packed their things and headed off to another park, where they run the risk of this happening again, because it's clear that while the city wants to see these people housed, they also want to see them out of these parks.
They don't want to see them housed. They want them out of the parks. They want them swept under the carpet so no one can see them, and then we forget about them. If there was truly any truth to we want them housed, there would be housing for them. We would start building affordable housing. The politicians don't care. All they care about are their donors. And those donors are Starlight, Caprete, and other landlord rent-seeking organizations and businesses. Many of these politicians are close friends with people who own real estate investment trusts, who own property management groups. That's why there's no regulation on rent. There's no cap on rent. Yes, there's a maximum that a rent can increase yearly with tenants, but a tenant moves out, a rent seeker can jack up the rent as high as they want for the next tenant, and that's what's happening. These reno-evictions, these N12s for personal use, bad faith, that's exactly what's happening. They're evicting current tenants so that they can jack up that rent. And if the politicians had any semblance of caring, that would not be happening. We would be building affordable housing in droves. But no, for the past 10 years, there has been no new builds on affordable housing. Maintenance of affordable housing and public housing, there's been none. They don't want to see people housed.
Okay, Alex Giasso in Toronto, thanks.
Okay, so the next one here is from Global News.
Police officers formed a line as they slowly worked their way through one of
Okay, I'm trying to get it to
two
a better
encampments
resolution.
on the
Just give me a second. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay.
north and south sides of Toronto's Trinity.
I'm going to... No, that's not 720p. That is not absolutely not. So I'm going to pause recording here as soon as I can get something. Okay, let's give this another try.
Police officers formed a line as they slowly worked their way through one of two encampments on the north and south sides of Toronto's Trinity Bellwoods Park. As bystanders pulled at fencing while shouting and chanting, police began evicting those who live here. People like Coco White.
I'm just in complete disbelief. I'm shocked. Yeah, I never seen police being so aggressive.
Early Tuesday morning, police were brought in to help enforce trespassing notices, which were handed out 10 days ago. Between 20 and 25 people live here. The city has offered up indoor spaces like shelters and hotels with access to meals.
I've been recently to Trinity Bellwood. This 20 to 25, 30 people living, no, they're underplaying it. I was there last week walking through the park, and there was no way it was just 20, 30 people. There were a lot more there. I don't know what the news's motivation is for underreporting. I don't know if they're trying to downplay it because they are corporately owned, and again, many have interests in real estate. I counted at least 30 tents in the little section I was in, and from where I was standing, could see a lot more. There weren't just 30 people. The park looked like a campground, looked like a provincial park campground at peak. There were groups of maybe 5 to 10 tents in areas around, like a little community or a little co-op. And yeah, it was not that low. The numbers were not that low. They couldn't have been that low. If you consider there's at least one person per tent, possibly two or more sharing a tent.
Meals, mental health, and housing supports. But many question the combative approach the city has taken, including this woman who was removed by officers from the South Camp.
That the city is failing us. Honestly, that's what it tells me.
Demonstrators tried to take down the fences surrounding both of the encampments, but were met with pushback from police. At least two.
So the police erected fences around encampments. That's telling. You also know who tossed people behind fences in encampments? Yeah, exactly. Things are going to come to a head very soon because evictions are continuing now as well.
2 people were arrested and 1 woman was treated on site for allegedly being pepper sprayed. Here's Toronto Police Chief James Raymer.
A lot of the demonstrators that arrive, they come in the morning when they find out they're there just to obstruct and interfere.
Yeah, they are. They're to obstruct and interfere, to save people from being evicted from their new home. That's what protesters do. These aren't just shit disturbers who want to start a fight. Yeah, maybe some of them are. But most of them are there because they feel they need to help protect their neighbors. I walk around the neighborhood I'm in and I see so many signs on homes saying, I support our neighbors in encampments. No encampment evictions.
Our officers are there to ensure the safety of everyone involved, and that's all we're interested in. So,
yeah, right. Your officers weren't there to ensure the safety. Your officers were there to remove people from their what is now their home. Just like you're there when you're not supposed to be evicting people from actual homes and actual apartments and their actual units. That's not your job. It is the job of the sheriff to remove people during illegal eviction of their home. You are not supposed to be there. That is not your jurisdiction.
For those that are there, please just stand by. Let the city workers and the police do the job that they need to do.
Again, they're there to prevent that. They're there to prevent people from having to be basically migrants moving from park to park to park. Because there's nowhere else they can go. There's nowhere else that they feel safe. This is, again, just going to cause people to move to a new park, move onto the physical street, that do not feel safe in shelters. And that is probably all of the people living in those parks. They're only accepting the shelter because they're being physically forced and violently forced.
But many who live in these encampments, which are made up of about 65 structures, don't want to move to city-run facilities, as they say they are not a safe option.
At least here they had autonomy, and they have autonomy still, even though the...
So, it suddenly went from 30 people to 60 structures? How is that possible? Are there empty tents sitting there? Okay, quite possibly, yes. It's during the day. Maybe some of these people actually do work but can't afford rent. So maybe they're at their job. Maybe they're at somewhere to get food or have a shower or use the facilities. Because we know now, if they're being evicted, the porta potties that were put up are probably have been pulled out. So now these people will have nowhere to use the washroom. So they're going to be using it in the park. Because most places now are not letting non-customers use their washrooms. Even gas stations.
The police have surrounded it.
Here is another live look at police officers lining the edge of the park there. When we pan over to the encampment, you can kind of see, again, people somewhat milling about. Now, at this point in time, Toronto's police chief has asked people to, quietly leave the park. We do know, according to Toronto police, that at least 3 people are facing charges related to weapons and assaulting a peace officer.
All right. So, let's look at...
Welcome back and happening now. This is a live look at Trinity.
Breakfast television, which is City TV. And again, I'm just going to pause it to let the video actually load and make sure that it's in decent. All right, so once again, breakfast television on City TV.
Welcome back and happening now. This is a live look at Trinity Bellwood's Park, and quite a response here as the City of Toronto enforcing trespass notices for those who have called this area home for the last little while. And there are a lot of questions as to why. And what this response is going to look like. As things stand, it looks fairly peaceful, but we know these notices have started to be handed out, and there are a lot of discussions underway right now. A massive response that we've seen from Toronto Police. Let's get some more details. Joining me now is Brad Ross, Chief Communications Officer for the City of Toronto. Good morning to you, Brad. Hi, Brad. Do we have you?
Well, I'm still on Zoom. I thought you were going to call.
Oh, there we go. No worries, Brad. I think we're going to continue with this on Zoom. We are having some technical issues here, but as long as we can hear you, we are looking at a live look right now at Trinity Bellwoods. Can you give us some more details as to what is happening this morning?
Sure. So we are, the city did issue trespass notices to Trinity Bellwoods Park on June the 12th. The city is now enforcing that notice. We have safe indoor space for everybody who is encamped at Trinity Bellwoods Park, and we have continued to engage with people in the park. At some point, we do need to enforce parks bylaws to ensure that our parks are safe and accessible for all.
All right. Again, park bylaw shouldn't matter right now. If you really care, let's get people into housing. Let's make it affordable for people to live.
And we only do that when we do have safe indoor space for people to come into either a shelter.
They keep saying safe indoor space. What they mean is what they think is safe. I would like to issue a challenge to every councillor, Mr. Mayor, the councillors and members of other cities. Go spend some time. Go spend 2 weeks. 2 weeks. In shelters. See how safe they are. 2 weeks. I want you to spend 2 weeks in shelters. Then come back and tell me they're safe for marginalized people or anyone. Go spend some time in a men's shelter.
Shelter or hotel program, where importantly they will have access to a housing worker so that they can be housed. Affordable housing, supportive housing is the goal.
There's not enough units for supportive and accessible housing. There is a 15-year wait list as it sits in the City of Toronto for affordable housing. Housing workers don't do anything. When I was in the shelter system, only 4 months ago, all they could do, yes, they would direct you to a book of listings, most of them out of people's range, especially again on ODSP and OW and other supports. Even rooms are $800, $900, $1,100. And finding housing as somebody who identifies as queer or trans or non-binary or anything other than cis white male, cis white female is nearly impossible. There's no units in affordable housing. Like I said, 15 years for Toronto, 8 years for Brampton, 8 years for Peel. I believe Hamilton is 15 to 20 years. Where are you going to magically find these within the next couple of days, within the next 2 weeks. It's not happening.
For all people who are experiencing homelessness, but the city also needs to have parks accessible to all residents of the city, and so it's going to take some time to.
Actually, most residents of the city who understand what's going on, who aren't sitting up in their ivory towers, who aren't sitting in their Bay Street offices, who aren't making $1 million a year, understand what's going on. And quite a few support tent encampments. Many would rather see people living in their parks than living on their streets or in shelters. Violence happens in shelters. Trust me, it does. It just doesn't get reported because we don't want to know about it. As a trans person in Peel, I have stories to tell. And I think I'll do that on a separate video, not focusing on myself right now. I'm focusing on the people in these encampments who need that space to survive.
Restore the park, and we need to make sure that that everybody has access to the park this summer.
Brad, has the city been meeting with advocates in these ongoing discussions to talk about why they want to stay?
Well, we have been engaging with people experiencing homelessness in encampments since the start of the pandemic some 20,000 times. We have referred more than 1,700 people into safe indoor space, and we have found housing, permanent housing, for more than 5,500 people who are in the shelter system. So the encampments are not safe.
The problem is, again, in November and December, 14,000 eviction hearings were heard. Most of them probably got the eviction or got what's known as a standard order of 11 days to pay. And then, unfortunately, couldn't pay because, for various reasons, again, they didn't have the money. They were so evicted. I would say that probably close to 10,000 people were evicted. Most of them looks like they were able to find something, but many weren't. And that's where the problem lies. 1,500 people versus, let's play it conservative and say 5,000 people. Still doesn't add up. You're not going to find housing for all of these people because we don't have it. Because there are rent seekers and investors and REITs buying up property and leaving them empty because they know that they'll still make profit on it from raised rents of units that are occupied because there's going to be, well, there actually is a bidding war. Tenants are actually getting into bidding wars over places. So the rent advertised $1,500, then suddenly there's a bidding war and it's $2,700 because there's no housing, because empty houses and empty units that are still being held for Airbnb, that are being held because investment firms can leave them empty. There's no consequence. They still get their equity, and they still get the privilege of scarcity
This year alone, we've seen 114 fires in encampments, and unfortunately, we have had some fatalities. When you include the debris that has accumulated in the encampments, as well as other combustibles like gasoline and propane tanks.
How are people supposed to cook? And the fires, a lot of them were set by somebody, an arsonist, that were set on the actual tents, set aflame. Meaning it wasn't the people in the encampment. It was somebody probably who had a problem with encampments. Are deaths going to happen when people live on the street in a park? Yeah, they're going to. Because people aren't meant to live on the street.
It makes these encampments incredibly unsafe, not just for people who are living in them, but the first responders when they're called, and the people who, the general public, whether they're walking through the park or whether they're a neighbor of the park. So these parks need to be safe. They need to be accessible to every resident. And the parks bylaw does allow the city to clear encampments, because encampments.
Again, they seem to be mentioning that they're doing it for the residents because residents need access to the parks. Yeah, I can agree with that, but I'm willing, and obviously everyone at that protest or at defending the encampment was, to give up the park so people can live not on the actual street, cannot live in dangerous shelters.
Are not permitted, and in fact the courts sided with the city on that very question last fall, and so
again, those bylaws should be suspended right now. These aren't people partying it up in the park and thinking that, hey, let's pitch a tent in the park and get away for the weekend. These are people who need to live.
we have been, as I say, engaging throughout this pandemic to encourage people to come inside where it is safe, where they have access to meals, to laundry, to harm reduction services, and, as I say, importantly, to a housing worker.
Again, if people don't feel safe, they're not going to go. And all of these people don't feel safe. They're being bullied into going. I know several times I nearly left the shelter system to go live on the street because I didn't feel safe. Thankfully, I had somebody to talk me down.
Brad, we are hearing from our cameras at the scene that there may be a window of time that those who are at these encampments have been told, a window of 3 hours that they need to clear out. Is that right?
Well, what we're doing is we're giving people who are living in these encampments the opportunity to collect belongings. They can bring 2 bags with them, and then we will store other belongings that they can't bring with them for up to 30 days. So we want to give them time to...
Yeah, so basically after 30 days, they lose everything they own. Yeah. Because they're not going to find housing in 30 days. Unless they're extremely lucky. They're going to lose everything but 2 bags of what they own. And that happened to me as well.
To gather their belongings. I should note, though, that the police that are there, their presence is to keep the peace, is to protect both people who are living in the encampments as well as the city workers who are there to do their jobs.
No, it's not. It's to make sure they leave. They're not there to make sure people are safe. If they were there to make sure people are safe, they wouldn't be removing people from the parks who are living in these encampments. They've just made all of these people's lives more dangerous.
This is about, having a dialogue with people who are living in these encampments, as we have been doing throughout. Today is the day we are asking them at Trinity Bellwoods Park to have TTC buses on standby programs. So there's lots of opportunity for people to come inside and to get the supports that they need.
Brad, I have to ask you this last question before you go, and I know we're having technical issues. We are hearing reports that there may be some criminal activity involved, potentially firearms involved at these encampments. Can you confirm any?
Oh, bullshit. Bullshit. These people are trying to live their lives. This is, yes, there's probably weapons. People will feel safer if they can defend themselves. But they're using this as an excuse to, oh, there's criminal activity going on here. No. Most likely, yes, there's drug use because a lot of people are self-medicating. Because there is no perceived hope. Their only escape is to get high. Or drunk, or any other, or abuse any other substance. The idea that they are doing this because there's guns is bullcrap.
Any of this?
No, Melanie, I can't. I mean, we'll leave that to the police to discuss. The city's focus is ensuring that those who are living in these encampments can come inside to where it is safe. Have there been criminal activity within encampments? Yes, there have. Those have been reported in the past, and if there is an ongoing investigation with respect to any other kind of criminal activity, we'll leave that to the police to discuss. The city's focus, as I say this morning and today, is to help those who are living in this encampment come inside where it's safe.
Of course there's criminal activity. Where you find poverty, you're gonna find crime.
Okay, that is Brad Ross, Chief Communications Officer for the City of Toronto. Apologies for the technical difficulties there, Brad. Thank you. All right, 7:36 right now. We are going to continue to follow that developing story for you throughout the morning. Right now, though, we check in with you, Frankie.
Okay. Let's end it there. Where is stop share? For now. There are plenty other. Just make sure that that's on pause. There's plenty of other stuff that we could react to. But, yeah. You know my position on this. I don't agree with it. I was almost there. Yeah, I'm not feeling too good right now about this. I'm thankful that I found a place and didn't have to end up on the street. But these people, probably 90% of them, through no fault of their own, have found themselves living on the street because of a global pandemic, and nobody gives a shit. Nobody in power gives a shit. All right. Until next time, rent is not due. And hopefully we'll have something a little bit more fun. or at least educational to help you. For those who are still living on the street and who happen to see this, I don't know how they will, but you never know. You're supported. A lot of people in my neighborhood support you. If there was something I could do, I would be doing it. I'm going to keep an eye out for any actions that are happening and then join them. I am on Ontario Works myself, and I know how perilous housing can be on supports, especially when you don't have any. For now, please don't do anything drastic. If you're living in these shelters, stay safe as possible. And hopefully, one day, within our lifetimes, we will see truly affordable housing. And hopefully, the demise of the landlord class. Because if it wasn't for the landlord class, you'd have a home.